Okay, hello everyone. This is again AP Biology, and we're going to look at community ecology study questions. And our first question here is, how are communities different than populations? A community is all the populations. The populations are all the members of one species that are living in the same area at the same time. Well, we have a community which is a bunch of these populations, so it would be like the deer and the mice and the oak trees in one area. That's a community, while a population would be all of the white-tailed deer in that given area at that given time. Describe whether these relationships are positive, negative, or have no effect on both species. Right, so these were from the PowerPoint, and we're just going to go through them. We have parasitism, which is obviously negative effect on the host. And a positive effect on the parasite. Competition, which is competition, I believe it's a negative. Both of them lose energy. Predation and herbivory are positive, negative. Some things eating another organism. In herbivory, it's again a plant being eaten. And in predation, it's another consumer that's being eaten. In commensalism, one hurts an organism and the other one doesn't know about this. So basically, the example for commensalism is a fungus that makes penicillin that's killing a bacteria, but the fungus has no gain from this relationship. So it's a -0. That one, we did competition already. Mutualism, this is when the symbiotic relationship, both of the organisms in it, they benefit from this relationship. Commensalism, this is when one of them is benefiting and the other one has no effect. This could be like the buffalo on top of the, or sorry about that, buffalo with the egrets on top of them. These are these white birds that sit on top of the buffalo. It wouldn't be the other way around. That would be crazy. Another example of this would be a bird's nest in a tree. All right, let's go to interspecific and interspecific competition. Interspecific competition would be the same species competing. It's in the same species, so remember like that. Interspecific is where it's different species competing with each other. A fundamental and unrealized niche, an example. So let's see. A fundamental niche is when the max possible niche is being described, or a realized niche is the actual niche. A niche, again, is all the organisms' interactions in its environment, and this competition limits the niche. Right, so an example of fundamental one would be the territory that all the mussels, let's pretend we have a rock face, and all the mussels are everywhere. A fundamental niche would be, of course, to occupy that whole rock, the whole face of it. Well, a realized niche, maybe we have other animals, organisms trying to also get on the rock, and then they're all competing for the space, the food, there's a good water or access to nutrients on that rock. So the mussels aren't going to be occupying the whole rock, but instead they're going to be limited to a different area. So a fundamental niche is larger than a realized niche. This is the true one. This is the smaller niche. Diagram at the right show competitive exclusion. I believe this is the one with the bacteria. And when there's another population introduced to make this community of the different bacteria, you could see that in certain bacteria that the growth of their populations decreasing because of that presence of that other one taking up the niche as well. There's competition. The benefits of resource partitioning. Are there any drawbacks? Resource partitioning is when the organisms could reduce the competition for the overlapping resources. An example of this would be in the notes. The warblers all use different parts of this pine tree, and they could all go on the different branches or the nooks wherever they need to go. and they're all using the same tree. The benefits of this would be, again, reduced competition. There's less use of energy because remember, in competition, both of the organisms in play lose energy, so it's a negative negative. Well, if they could just relax and go to the different parts of the tree in this example, then there's a less need of competition. A drawback to this, I guess you could say, if there also, again, if there is another organism, I guess this could be an example where, let's say that there's an organism that needs that whole patch of plants or that whole tree, and these warblers are resource partitioning on it already. Well, they're going to be up against this other organism that isn't doing this resources partitioning, and it needs that whole resource to itself. I think that would be a drawback to it. And if the resources, of course, run out, then it's bad news for all the parties involved. How do allopatric and sympatric species fit into the character displacement model? All right, so we're going to go to the character displacement in the notes. This is when competing populations are more divergent in adapted characteristics than non-competitive populations of same species. So basically, if there's different populations of different species, they're divergent in adapted characteristics. And then if there's no competition between populations, there's less diverging in adapted characteristics. So allopatric, sympatric. Remember, allopatric is different country and sympatric same country. When they're sympatric, there's an example of the birds with the beaks that need to get the different niches, kind of like Darwin's finches. And when they're in the same area, the sympatric relationship, the bird beaks diverged because they needed to compete for these different specific niches. We have the next one is 4 ways organisms limit predation. Okay, so again, predation is when another organism eats another consumer. So we have cryptic coloration, which is blending in with the environment. We have aposematic coloration, which is warning colors. So basically like a poison dart frog. Baptesian mimicry, which is the harmless animal mimics the harmful. So like a corn snake would take on the same coloration as a copperhead. It's mimicking that venomous copperhead. Mullerian mimicry is when a message is enforced that it's distasteful. So like a wasp, a hornet, a bee, a yellow jacket, all of them have the same black and yellow coloring, and that's like a danger flag. 4 ways plants defend against herbivory. Give examples. So with these, we have plants that have alkaloids. This is like tobacco, and other plants that have physiological effects when they're consumed. We have bitter leaves, which is known as tannins. We have terpenoids, which are very toxic plants. And we also have mechanical defenses like spines and thorns. Populations are regulated bottom up or top down. So bottom up regulation would be the producers control the populations above them, and top down would be the predators control the populations beneath them. It could be contested, I think, but if there is more plant biomass, just like the presence of those organisms' plants, that means there's more relationships. So I think because the producers would be at the bottom, I think they would have more influence. But then again, if there weren't any predators and there's more predators than the lower levels, then that also spells danger for the community as well. The more diverse a community, the more resistant it is to disturbance. Explain this statement. So diversity is when there's more different organisms that make up the community. And a disturbance is any event that alters the community structure by removing organisms or changing resources availability. So let's see the example of a forest gap as the disturbance. Maybe a tree got cut down. And so now there's that space in the undergrowth there for more plants, more diverse plants in the community to use the sun for photosynthesis and growth. This Without that disturbance, there wouldn't be that diversity of those new plants. Because it's so diverse, there's also a bigger picture in that whole rainforest. Since it's so diverse, there's going to be multiple organisms that could take up other niches and take up the same niche. So let's say like a fire killed all of species A and there were the herbivores. Well, species B is also a herbivore because there's that diversity. There's different species that play these roles. So then the ecosystem could, or the community, I'm sorry, communities could still go on because there's still a presence of herbivores there. What do the symbols in this equation stand for? Honestly, I do not know on that one. It wasn't in the notes, it was in the PowerPoint we were given, so let's just skip it. Diversity will be highest in communities that experience an intermediate level of disturbance. Why is this? This is the hypothesis, and it's related to RNK selected species. Again, the forest gap with the sunlight, and it's going to the lower plants. I think that would be it. Be the same example to explain that. I'm not really sure on this one. It feels a little close to that other question, honestly. Anyway, apologies about that. What are the stages of primary succession? So primary succession, we have the definition. It's when the community grows on previously uninhabited land. So there would be a pioneer species. Sorry about that, not primary species, a pioneer species. And then we would have a climax community take off from there. Example of a pioneer species would be a lichen, and then the climax community would be the spruce trees that pop up in that area. The area hypothesis, and is it always true? The area hypothesis is when there's a larger area, there's more species because they support larger populations and greater range of habitats. This may not be true because, of course, there's islands that are smaller and they could have more diversity. Think about like Papua New Guinea or Hawaii, and even these smaller islands in the middle of nowhere, they could have much more diversity than, let's say, you compare Madagascar to the Sahara Desert. Sahara Desert's very wide, it's very expansive, but then Madagascar is a small island that has a lot of diversity on it. Explain some factors that affect island populations and give examples. So island populations, sorry about that, refer to these isolated populations. It could be on an island, it could be also in the middle of nowhere. Island size and source pool distance affect the species richness. Again, the species richness is the number of different species in this area. And when the source pool distance increases, the species richness decreases. So the source pool would be like the mainland, and the further you get from the mainland, there's less chance of these species coming over. When the island is larger, there's more chance of different species to come over as well. All right, and I think that's it. Please look over more of these topics in detail. Again, the PowerPoints and the notes or anything you find online would be helpful. There's some questions in here that are still unsure of, and maybe we would like to get some more detail on them prepared for test time. But other than that, I hope this was a very helpful and brief overview of everything. Again, I say brief. There's still some things to explore and look and learn about. All right, guys, thank you.